They said she brought death wherever she walked. They said her husband's debts were a curse that would swallow anyone who showed her mercy. So when Marla Keaton arrived in Dust Hollow with nothing but a hungry child and empty pockets, the town locked its doors like she carried plague. She'd accepted it, accepted that she deserved nothing, that love was a luxury for women who hadn't failed. But then a cowboy stepped from the shadows, a man who'd buried his own heart years ago, and said 5 words that changed everything. You deserve me. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach kicked up a cloud of dust as it rolled to a stop in front of Dust Hollow's general store, and Marla Keaton stepped down onto the wooden boardwalk with legs that barely held her weight. 3 days of rattling over broken roads had left her bruised and exhausted, but it was nothing compared to the weight she'd carried for the past 6 months. The weight of widowhood, debt, and a future that looked like a long fall into darkness. "Mama, I'm thirsty," Lily whispered, tugging at Marla's worn skirts. Marla looked down at her daughter's face, dirt-smudged cheeks, eyes too wide and too worried for a 6-year-old, and felt her heart crack a little more. "I know, sweetheart. Just hold on a little longer." She'd come back to Dust Hollow because there was nowhere else to go. Her late husband, Thomas Keaton, had grown up here, and she'd hoped, prayed really, that someone would remember him with enough fondness to offer a hand, a job, a room, anything. The driver tossed her single carpetbag down from the coach roof. It landed with a sad thump at her feet, light enough that anyone watching would know she owned nothing of value. "That's all, ma'am," the driver said, not meeting her eyes. He'd been uncomfortable since she'd boarded in Silver Creek, and she knew why. News traveled fast in these small western towns. Everyone knew about Thomas. Everyone knew about the debts. And everyone knew that debt had a way of spreading like sickness, touching anyone foolish enough to get close. "Thank you," Marla said quietly, picking up the bag. The driver climbed back onto his seat, snapped the reins, and the coach lurched forward without another word. Marla watched it disappear down the main street, watched her last connection to anywhere else vanish into the dust, and felt completely, utterly alone. She turned toward the general store. Through the window, she could see Martha Winters behind the counter, the same woman who'd sold her penny candy when she'd first arrived in Dust Hollow as Thomas's new bride 7 years ago. Martha had been kind then, cheerful even. Surely she'd remember. Marla pushed open the door, and the bell above it chimed, bright and hopeful. Martha looked up from her ledger. Her expression shifted the moment she recognized Marla. Something that might have been pity crossed her face, followed quickly by something harder. Fear, maybe. Or disgust. "Mrs. Keaton," Martha said, her voice flat. "Mrs. Winters, it's good to see you again." Marla tried to smile. "I was hoping—" "I heard about Thomas," Martha interrupted. "I'm sorry for your loss." The words had all the warmth of a winter stone. "Thank you," Marla said carefully. "I've come back to Dust Hollow to make a fresh start. For Lily's sake. I was wondering if you knew of any work available. I can clean, sew, cook, anything, really. I'm a hard worker." Martha's mouth pressed into a thin line. "No." The word landed like a slap. I'm sorry?" Marla stammered. "There's no work here for you, Mrs. Keaton. I suggest you get back on the next coach heading anywhere else." "But I don't have money for—" "That's not my problem." Martha's eyes flickered to Lily, then away, as if looking at the child might soften her resolve. "Your husband owed money all over this territory. He borrowed from half the ranchers in this county and never paid a cent back. Some folks lost everything because of him." "I know," Marla said, her voice breaking. "I know what he did, but I had nothing to do with—" "Doesn't matter. People remember. They remember how Thomas Keaton smiled and made promises and left them holding nothing but air. They remember how he drank up their trust and then drank himself to death." Martha leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost pitying. "I'm sorry, truly, but if I help you, I'll lose customers. If I hire you, people will take their business to Hadley Creek. I can't afford that. No one here can afford to be associated with the Keaton name." The room tilted. Marla reached out, steadying herself against the counter. "Please," she whispered. "I have a daughter." "I see that. Which is why I'm telling you clear. Get on the next coach. Find somewhere nobody knows your husband's name. That's the kindest thing I can say." Marla felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, squeezing tight, and it gave her just enough strength to straighten her spine. "Thank you for your time," she managed, then turned and walked out before the tears could start. The door closed behind them, and the cheerful bells sounded like mockery. Outside, the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, painting the town in shades of gold and amber that would have been beautiful if Marla could see anything through the panic rising in her chest. She tried the boarding house next. Mrs. Talbot answered the door, took one look at Marla's face, and said, "No rooms available," before closing the door firmly. She tried the dress shop. The seamstress wouldn't even come to the door. She tried the saloon, desperate enough to consider any work at all. The owner, a thick-necked man named Briggs, opened the door a crack, looked her up and down, and said, "I heard you were Thomas Keaton's widow. That true?" "Yes, but then no. I don't need that kind of trouble." The door slammed. An hour passed. Then 2. Marla walked from business to business, door to door, and found them all locked against her. Some people were coldly polite. Others were openly hostile. One old rancher spat on the ground when he saw her coming and crossed the street to avoid her. Lily hadn't complained once, but Marla could feel her daughter's exhaustion in every dragging step, could see it in the way she kept rubbing her eyes. "Mama, I'm so thirsty," Lily finally said again, her voice small and cracking. "I know, baby. I know." There was a water pump in the small square at the center of town, beside a horse trough. Marla led Lily to it, set down her carpet bag, and worked the handle. The pump groaned and resisted, but finally water gushed out, clear and cold. She cupped her hands and let Lily drink first, then drank herself, the water so cold it hurt her teeth. It was the first good thing she'd felt all day, and it made her want to cry. The sun was nearly gone now. The sky had turned deep purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Marla looked around the empty square, at the businesses with their doors closed and their windows darkening, and realized with growing horror that she had nowhere to go. No money, no friends, no shelter. She sank down onto the edge of the water trough, pulled Lily close, and tried to think. But there was nothing to think about. She'd gambled everything on Dust Hollow, and she'd lost. "Mama, are we going to sleep here?" Lily asked, looking up at her with those 2 wise eyes. "Just for a little while," Marla lied, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Just until I figure things out." But she had nothing to figure out. The next coach wouldn't come for 3 days, and even if it did, she had no money for passage. They were stranded. They were alone. The night air began to cool, and Marla wrapped her shawl around Lily, holding her close. Maybe in the morning someone would take pity. Maybe, "No woman and child belong out here alone." The voice came from the shadows at the edge of the square, low, rough, and certain. Marla's head snapped up. She couldn't see him clearly at first, just a tall silhouette against the darkening sky, broad-shouldered and still. Then he stepped forward into the last of the fading light, and she could make out his features. Weathered face, maybe mid-30s, dark hair under a worn Stetson, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and felt even more. He moved with a slight limp, she noticed, favoring his left leg. "I'm sorry," Marla said quickly, standing and pulling Lily behind her. "We're not causing any trouble. We'll move on." "Move on where?" The man's voice wasn't unkind, just matter-of-fact. "Town's closed up for the night, and from what I saw it was closed to you long before sunset." Heat flooded Marla's cheeks. "You were watching?" "Didn't need to watch. I know this town. I know how they treat people they've decided aren't worth their time." He came closer, and Marla could see his face more clearly now. Hard lines, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, but something in his expression that wasn't cruel. "You're Thomas Keaton's widow." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Marla said, lifting her chin. "Does that mean you're going to turn away too?" "No." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Means I know why you're sitting by a water pump with night coming on and nowhere to go." "We'll manage," Marla said, hating how her voice shook. "Will you?" He glanced at Lily, who was peeking out from behind Marla's skirts with wide, frightened eyes. "Child's half starved. You don't look much better. How long since you ate?" Marla didn't answer, couldn't. The man sighed, and it sounded like he was making a decision he'd regret. I've got a ranch about 3 miles west of here. Small place, but it's got a roof and a stove. You and the girl can stay there tonight. Get a meal. Get warm. Marla stared at him, searching for the catch, the cruelty hidden behind the offer. She'd learned the hard way that kindness always came with a price. Why? She asked bluntly. Why what? Why would you help me? Everyone else in this town made it very clear that the Keaton name is poison. The man was quiet for a long moment, and something dark and painful passed across his face. Because I know what it's like to be alone, he said finally. And because leaving a woman and child to freeze isn't something I can walk away from, no matter what her last name is. I don't have money to pay you. Didn't ask for money. Then what do you want? His jaw tightened. Nothing you're thinking. I'm offering shelter for a night, maybe 2, that's all. You can accept it or you can sit here and wait for the cold to make the decision for you. Lily tugged on Marla's skirt. Mama, I'm hungry. The man's expression softened slightly when he looked at Lily. Got stew on the stove, beef and potatoes, made too much, like always. Marla felt tears prick her eyes and forced them back. She'd cried enough today, but God, she was so tired, so scared. And Lily needed food, needed warmth, needed more than Marla could give her sitting beside a water pump in an empty town square. What's your name? Marla asked. Colt Harwood. The name rang a bell somewhere in the back of her memory. Something Thomas had mentioned once, maybe, or something she'd overheard, but she was too exhausted to place it. I'm Marla. This is Lily. I know. Colt gestured toward the edge of the square where a horse stood waiting, patient and still. Come on, night's getting colder. Marla hesitated one last moment, weighing the risk. But what choice did she have? Stay here and hope for a miracle, or trust a stranger who'd offered the first kindness she'd seen in months? She picked up her carpet bag. All right, thank you. Colt nodded and walked toward his horse. Marla followed, Lily's hand clutched tight in hers, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The horse was a big roan mare with gentle eyes. Colt patted her neck, then turned to Marla. She'll carry all 3 of us. I'll ride, you and the girl can sit in front. He mounted first, then reached down. Marla handed him the carpet bag, which he secured behind the saddle. Then she lifted Lily up. Colt took the child easily, settling her in front of him, and then extended his hand to Marla. She took it, his palm rough, his grip strong, and he pulled her up behind Lily. It was crowded, all 3 of them on one horse, but the mare didn't seem to mind. Hold on, Colt said, and Marla wrapped her arms around Lily, anchoring them both. The mare started forward at an easy walk, leaving Dust Hollow behind. Marla looked back once, at the town that had rejected her, and felt a strange mix of relief and despair. She'd come here hoping to find a new beginning, and instead she'd found exactly what she deserved, nothing. The thought settled in her chest like a stone. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve kindness. I don't deserve anything but this. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves and the whisper of wind through the prairie grass. The moon rose full and bright, turning the landscape silver. How far? Marla finally asked. Another mile, Colt said. Not much longer. Lily had gone quiet, her head resting against Colt's chest, and Marla realized with a start that her daughter had fallen asleep. The child trusted this stranger more easily than Marla did, but then again, children had better instincts about these things. Or maybe Lily was just too exhausted to care. You don't talk much, do you? Marla said, more to fill the silence than anything. Talking doesn't change much. I suppose not. Another stretch of quiet. Then Colt said, Thomas Keaton. He wasn't a good man. It wasn't a question, but Marla answered anyway. No, he wasn't. You knew that when you married him? I learned it after. Marla's voice went flat. By then, it was too late. He hurt you? Not the way you're thinking. He never raised a hand to me. But he lied. He gambled. He drank. He made promises he never intended to keep and borrowed money from people who couldn't afford to lose it. She swallowed hard. By the time he died, we'd lost everything. The house, the land, even my wedding ring. He'd sold it for drinking money. And the debts? He left behind more than I could ever repay, more than I even knew about. I spent 6 months in Silver Creek trying to work off what I could, but it wasn't enough. The creditors kept coming. Eventually, I realized the only way to give Lily any kind of future was to leave. Start over somewhere nobody knew us. So you came back here? Thomas grew up here. I thought, she trailed off, embarrassed. I thought maybe someone would remember him as a boy before he became what he was. I thought maybe someone would help for his sake. But they didn't. No, they didn't. Colt was quiet for a long moment. People in towns like this have long memories. They don't forget who wronged them. I'm not my husband. Doesn't matter to them. You carry his name. That's enough. The words stung because they were true. Marla closed her eyes and tried not to cry. For what it's worth, Colt said, his voice softer now. You deserve better than Thomas Keaton. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I got exactly what I deserved. No. The word was firm, almost angry. Nobody deserves to be left with nothing. Marla didn't respond. She couldn't, because deep down, she didn't believe him. A few minutes later, they crested a low hill, and Marla saw the ranch spread out below, a small cabin with a chimney releasing a thin line of smoke, a barn, a corral with a few horses. It wasn't much, but in the moonlight, it looked like a kind of salvation. Colt guided the mare down the hill and into the yard. He dismounted first, then helped Lily down, then Marla. The child woke up just enough to whimper, and Marla held her close. Go on inside, Colt said, nodding toward the cabin. Door's unlocked. I'll see to the mare. Marla hesitated. Thank you for this. Colt met her eyes, and something unreadable passed across his face. Don't thank me yet. Then he turned away, leading the mare toward the barn, and Marla carried Lily toward the cabin, toward warmth, toward the first shelter she'd had in what felt like a lifetime. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The cabin was simple but clean. One main room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed in the corner, and a small kitchen area with a cast-iron stove. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, but the room was still warm. The smell of beef stew hung in the air, rich and savory, and Marla's stomach clenched with hunger. She set Lily down on the bed, pulled off her daughter's shoes, and covered her with a quilt that had been folded at the foot of the mattress. Lily curled up immediately, asleep again within seconds. Marla stood there, looking around the cabin, and felt a strange sense of dislocation. This morning, she'd woken up on a stagecoach with no idea where she'd be sleeping tonight. And now she was here, in the home of a stranger who'd offered help when no one else would. The door opened and Colt stepped inside, bringing a gust of cold air with him. He took off his hat and hung it on a peg by the door, then moved to the stove. Stew's still warm, he said, ladling 2 bowls full. He set them on the table, then gestured for Marla to sit. She did, even though part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she didn't need his charity. But Lily needed her strong, and she couldn't be strong on an empty stomach. The first bite of stew was heaven, hot, savory, filling. She tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but within minutes she'd scraped the bowl clean. Colt pushed his own bowl toward her. Finish it. I can't. Yes, you can. I'll eat later. Marla wanted to argue, but she was still so hungry, and the stew was so good. She ate the second bowl too, more slowly this time, and when she was done, she felt almost human again. Thank you, she said quietly. Colt nodded and began cleaning up, moving around the small kitchen with the ease of someone used to taking care of himself. Marla watched him, studying the way he moved, careful, deliberate, favoring that left leg. There was a story there, she thought, a painful one. You can take the bed, Colt said, not looking at her. I'll sleep in the barn. No, Marla said quickly. I can't take your bed. Lily and I can sleep in the barn. You're not sleeping in the barn. His voice was firm. It's cold out there, and you've been through enough today. Take the bed. Where will you sleep? I've got a bedroll. I'll be fine by the fire. Marla wanted to protest, but she was too tired to fight. Just for tonight, she said. Tomorrow I'll figure something out. Colt didn't respond to that. He just finished cleaning up, then pulled a bedroll from a trunk in the corner and spread it out near the hearth. Marla stood, suddenly awkward. I should go to sleep. Yeah. She moved toward the bed where Lily was curled up under the quilt and carefully climbed in beside her daughter. The mattress was surprisingly comfortable, and the quilt smelled like wood smoke and sage. Colt banked the fire, then settled onto his bedroll, his back to her. Mr. Harwood, Marla said into the darkness. Colt. Colt, why are you really doing this? The silence stretched so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, finally, because someone should have done it for her. Her? Doesn't matter. Go to sleep, Mrs. Keaton. Marla. Go to sleep, Marla. She wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the pain she heard buried in his voice. But exhaustion was pulling her down, and Lily was warm beside her, and for the first time in months she felt safe. So she closed her eyes and let sleep take her, unaware that in saving her, Colt Harwood had cracked open a door he'd thought he'd nailed shut forever. Unaware that this one night would become 2, then 3, then more. Unaware that in this small cabin on the edge of nowhere, something broken in both of them had just begun, very slowly, to heal. Outside, the wind whispered across the prairie, and the stars turned overhead, indifferent and eternal. And inside, 2 wounded souls and 1 innocent child slept, sheltered from the cold, held safe, for now, by the fragile grace of a stranger's kindness. The first light of dawn would bring new questions, new fears, new complications. But for this one night, there was only warmth and food and rest. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Marla woke to the sound of an axe biting into wood, steady, rhythmic, relentless. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the events of yesterday came flooding back, and she opened her eyes to find herself in Colt Harwood's cabin, wrapped in a quilt that smelled like sage, with Lily still asleep beside her. Pale morning light filtered through the single window, turning everything soft and golden. The fire in the hearth had been rebuilt and was crackling cheerfully. On the table sat a plate covered with a cloth, steam still rising from beneath it. Marla sat up slowly, her body aching from days of travel and a night of actual rest. She hadn't slept that deeply in months, maybe years. The realization made her feel guilty and grateful in equal measure. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Lily, and moved to the table. Under the cloth, she found fresh biscuits, scrambled eggs, and strips of bacon. Her stomach growled loudly. The axe sound stopped. A moment later, the door opened and Colt stepped inside, carrying an armload of split wood. He glanced at her, nodded once, then moved to stack the wood beside the hearth. You didn't have to make breakfast, Marla said. Had to eat anyway. He straightened, wiping his hands on his pants. Figured you would too. I meant, I could have. You were asleep. Eat while it's hot. There was no arguing with that tone. Marla sat down and began to eat, trying not to devour the food too quickly. Everything tasted better than it had any right to. The eggs perfectly seasoned, the biscuits light and buttery, the bacon crisp. After months of scraping by on stale bread and thin soup, it felt like luxury. Colt poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot on the stove and set one in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it, savoring the warmth. Thank you, she said, for all of this. He sat down across from her with his own coffee but didn't eat. You planning to head back to town today? The question landed like a stone in her chest. I don't know. There's nothing for me there. There's nothing for you here either. The words were blunt, almost cruel, but his voice wasn't. It was just honest. Marla set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. I know that, she said quietly. I know you didn't sign up for taking care of a widow and her child. We'll leave after breakfast. I'll figure something out. Figure what out? You got no money, no prospects, and a town full of people who won't give you the time of day. Colt took a sip of his coffee, his expression unreadable. Where exactly are you planning to go? I don't know. The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with frustration and fear. I don't know. All right? But I can't stay here. I won't be someone's burden. Didn't say you were a burden. You just said there's nothing for me here. That's not the same thing. Colt set down his cup. Look, I'm not good at this, talking, people. But what I'm trying to say is, you can stay, for a while, until you get your feet under you. Marla stared at him. Why would you do that? I already told you why. No, you gave me some cryptic answer about her and then told me to go to sleep. That's not an answer. Colt's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared into his coffee like it might give him the words he needed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. I was engaged once. 5 years ago. Her name was Catherine. He paused, and pain flickered across his face. She was everything good, kind, patient, always seeing the best in people. She saw the best in me anyway, which was a miracle in itself. Marla stayed quiet, sensing that if she spoke, he'd stop. We were supposed to get married in the spring. Had the date set, the preacher lined up, everything, but that winter something changed. She got quiet, stopped smiling as much. I asked what was wrong, and she'd say nothing, just tired. I believed her because I wanted to. His hands tightened around his cup. Then one morning, I woke up and she was gone. Found her down by the creek. She'd walked into the water and never walked out. Oh, God, Marla whispered. Left a note. Said she was tired of pretending everything was fine. Said she felt like a burden, like she was dragging me down. Said I deserved better than someone who couldn't even get out of bed most days. Colt's voice cracked. She thought she was doing me a favor, thought she was setting me free. Tears blurred Marla's vision. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it, should have pushed harder, asked better questions. But I was so damn focused on the ranch, on building something for our future, that I missed what was happening right in front of me. He finally looked up, and his eyes were haunted. So when I see a woman sitting alone in a town square with no place to go, telling herself she doesn't deserve help, yeah, I remember Catherine. And I remember that sometimes people need help whether they think they deserve it or not. Marla couldn't speak. The weight of his grief, his guilt, pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. I'm not asking you to stay forever, Colt said. I'm not asking for anything. But winter's coming, and you've got a child to think about. Stay until spring. Give yourself time to figure out what comes next. That's all. I can't just take your charity. It's not charity if you work for it. Ranch always needs extra hands. You can help with cooking, mending, whatever needs doing. Fair trade. Marla wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she didn't need his help, didn't need anyone. But then she thought of Lily, still sleeping in the bed, and the long, cold winter ahead and the locked doors of Dust Hollow. Until spring, she said finally, and I'll earn my keep. Every bit of it. Colt nodded. Until spring. The door to the bedroom area creaked and Lily appeared, rubbing her eyes. Mama? I'm here, sweetheart. Marla held out her arms, and Lily ran to her, climbing into her lap. Did you sleep well? Uh-huh. I had dreams about horses. Colt's expression softened slightly. You like horses? Lily nodded shyly, peeking at him from behind Marla's shoulder. Got a few in the barn. Maybe later you can come see them, if your mama says it's all right. Lily's face lit up. Can I, Mama? Please? Marla looked at Colt, saw something gentle in his eyes that hadn't been there before, and felt her walls crack just a little. We'll see. But she already knew the answer would be yes. How could she deny Lily this small joy after everything the child had been through? The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Marla woke early, made breakfast, and then set about whatever work needed doing. There was always something, mending torn shirts, patching holes in socks, scrubbing pots, sweeping floors. She attacked each task with fierce determination, desperate to prove her worth. Colt worked from dawn until dusk, tending to the horses, fixing fences, chopping wood. He spoke little, but Marla began to notice things. The way he always left a plate of food warming on the stove for her. The way he'd repaired the loose leg on one of the chairs without saying a word. The way he'd carved a small wooden horse for Lily and left it on her pillow like it had appeared by magic. Lily thrived in ways that broke Marla's heart and healed it at the same time. Color returned to her cheeks. Her laughter came more easily. She spent hours in the barn with Colt, learning to brush the horses, feed them, clean their hooves. Colt was patient with her in a way that surprised Marla, gentle, teaching her how to move around the animals safely, answering her endless questions with quiet care. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The air grew colder, and the first snow began to fall, dusting the prairie in white. One afternoon, Marla was in the cabin mending one of Colt's shirts when she noticed something odd. The seam she was working on had already been stitched once, badly, with uneven loops and loose thread, and then torn open again. She frowned, examining it more closely. The tear looked deliberate, fresh. She set the shirt aside and picked up another from the mending pile. Same thing, a repair that had been undone. Understanding hit her like a physical blow. He was making work for her, tearing his own clothes, breaking things that didn't need fixing, creating tasks so she'd feel useful, so she'd feel like she was earning her keep. Anger flared hot in her chest. She threw the shirt down and stormed outside. Colt was in the corral, working with one of the younger horses. He looked up when he heard her coming, and something in her expression made him go still. "You've been sabotaging your own things," Marla said, her voice shaking. "Making extra work so I'd feel like I was contributing." Colt's face remained carefully neutral. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. I'm not stupid. The shirt I was just mending had been deliberately torn. So had the one before it. How many others?" He looked away, jaw tight. "Why?" Marla demanded. "Why would you do that?" "Because you needed to believe you were earning your place here," Colt said finally. "Because every time I tried to just give you something, food, shelter, whatever, you looked at me like I was offering you poison. So I made sure there was work. Made sure you could tell yourself you weren't taking charity. That's not your decision to make. Maybe not, but I did it anyway." He turned back to her, and there was something fierce in his eyes. "You want to be angry? Fine, be angry. But don't pretend you would have stayed if you thought you were just taking from me. Don't pretend you wouldn't have walked out that door the first chance you got, dragging that little girl back to God knows where just to prove you didn't need help." The truth of it stole her breath. Because he was right. She would have left, would have taken Lily and walked straight back into danger just to prove she wasn't weak, wasn't a burden, wasn't someone who needed saving. "I hate that you're right," she whispered. "I know." They stood there in the cold, snow falling around them, and something shifted between them. Some wall that had kept them at careful distance began to crack. "I don't know how to accept help," Marla said, her voice breaking. "Thomas taught me that needing anything made me weak, that asking for help was the same as admitting I'd failed." Thomas was wrong. Was he? "Look at me. I'm a widow with nothing, living in a stranger's cabin, lying to myself about earning my keep. You're a woman who survived a bad marriage and came out the other side with her daughter still safe. You're someone who kept going when most people would have quit. That's not weakness, Marla. That's strength." Tears froze on her cheeks. "I don't feel strong." "Strength isn't about feeling it. It's about doing what needs doing anyway." Colt took a step closer. "You want to earn your keep? Fine. Stop tearing yourself apart trying to prove something that doesn't need proving. Stay, rest, let yourself heal. That's worth more than any mending." "I don't know if I can." "Then learn." The horse in the corral whinnied, breaking the tension. Colt turned back to his work, and Marla stood there for another moment before walking slowly back to the cabin. She picked up the shirt she'd thrown down, smoothed it out, and began to mend it properly. Not because she had to prove anything, but because it needed doing. Because Colt needed a shirt without holes, and she could give him that much. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Marla sat by the fire and watched Colt work on a piece of leather, crafting what looked like a new bridle. His hands moved with practiced skill, sure and steady. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Sure." "Why do you live out here alone? You could have moved on after Catherine. Started over somewhere else." Colt's hands stilled. "Thought about it. Even packed up once, made it as far as Hadley Creek. But I couldn't do it. Felt like leaving her behind, like if I started over, I'd be saying she didn't matter. So you stay here and punish yourself instead." "Maybe." He resumed his work. "Or maybe I'm just not built for starting over. But you helped me start over." "That's different." "How?" "Because you're alive." The words came out harsh, almost angry. "You've got a chance. Catherine didn't get that. So yeah, maybe I stay here and punish myself, but at least I can make sure someone else gets the second chance she never had." Marla's chest ached. "Colt, don't." He set down the leather. "Don't say you're sorry again. Don't say any of it. I told you what happened so you'd understand why I'm helping, not so you'd feel sorry for me." I don't feel sorry for you. I understand now. Why you look at me the way you do sometimes. What way? Like you're trying to save something you already lost. The silence that fell was heavy and hurting. Colt stood abruptly, grabbed his coat from the peg by the door. Going to check the barn, he muttered, and was gone before she could respond. Marla sat alone by the fire, listening to the wind howl outside, and wondered if two broken people could help each other heal or if they'd just cut each other worse on their sharp edges. The answer came slowly, in small moments over the following weeks. It came in the morning she woke to find fresh flowers in a jar on the table, wildflowers he'd ridden miles to find, even though it was nearly winter. It came in the afternoon she caught him teaching Lily to read using an old book of poems, his rough voice gentle as he sounded out the words. It came in the evening she found him playing guitar on the porch, a sad, haunting melody that spoke of loss and longing, and didn't stop when she sat down beside him to listen. And it came in the quiet moments when their hands would brush reaching for the same cup, or when their eyes would meet across the cabin, and something unspoken would pass between them that felt like recognition, like two people who'd been walking in darkness suddenly seeing each other in the light. But it also came with complications. One morning in early December, Marla needed supplies from town. They were running low on flour, sugar, and coffee. Colt offered to go, but Marla refused. I can't hide forever, she said. If I'm going to make a life here, even temporarily, I need to face that town. They won't be kind. I know, but I'm done running. Colt studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll come with you. You don't have to. I'm coming. There was no arguing with that tone. So they hitched up the wagon, bundled Lily in warm clothes, and made the 3-mile journey to Dust Hollow. The town looked different in winter, harder, colder, less forgiving. They pulled up in front of the general store, and Marla felt every eye on the street turn toward them. Whispers started immediately. Colt helped her down from the wagon, his hand firm on her elbow. Stay close, he murmured. They walked into the store together, Lily between them. Martha Winters was behind the counter again, and her expression when she saw Marla was a complicated mix of surprise and disapproval. Mrs. Keaton, Martha said, her voice cold. Mrs. Winters, I need supplies. Marla handed over a list she'd written. Martha's eyes flicked to Colt, and something changed in her face. Calculation, maybe, or concern. Mr. Harwood, didn't expect to see you in town. Needed supplies, Colt said flatly. I see. Martha took the list, scanned it. This'll take a few minutes to put together. We'll wait. While Martha gathered the items, other customers began filtering into the store. Marla recognized some of them, ranchers Thomas had borrowed from, women who'd once been friendly. Now they whispered behind their hands, casting looks that ranged from pitying to disgusted. One man, thick-shouldered and mean-eyed, approached them directly. Marla recognized him from Thomas's stories. Vern Blackstone, a neighboring rancher who'd lost money in one of Thomas's schemes. Well, well, Vern said, his voice loud enough to carry. If it isn't Thomas Keaton's widow. Heard you were back. Thought you'd have the sense to stay away. I'm just here for supplies, Marla said, keeping her voice steady. Supplies you buying with what money? Oh, let me guess. Vern's eyes slid to Colt. You found yourself a new meal ticket already. That was fast. Colt moved between them in one smooth motion. Watch your mouth, Blackstone. Or what? You going to defend her honor? Vern laughed, ugly and harsh. She's a Keaton. She doesn't have any honor to defend. She's not her husband. Blood's blood. Debt's debt. Far as I'm concerned, she owes every person Thomas swindled, and if she's living at your place, that means you're covering for her. Vern spat on the floor. Makes you as bad as she is. Mama? Lily's voice was small and frightened. Marla's hands clenched into fists, but before she could speak, Colt took another step forward and his voice dropped to something dangerous. Listen to me carefully, Blackstone. You got a problem with Thomas Keaton's debts. That's between you and a dead man. But this woman and her child are under my protection now. You say one more word against them and you'll answer to me. Understood? Your protection, Vern sneered. That's supposed to scare me? It should. The two men stared at each other, tension crackling like lightning. Finally, Vern stepped back, but his expression promised this wasn't over. "You're making a mistake, Harwood," he said. "Whole town knows it. You're letting poison under your roof, and it's going to rot you from the inside out." He turned and walked out, letting the door slam behind him. The store was silent. Every person in it had heard the exchange, and Marla felt shame burn through her like acid. This was what she'd brought to Colt's door: trouble, gossip, hatred. Martha finished packing the supplies, her face carefully neutral. "That'll be $4.30. Colt paid, gathered the parcels, and gestured for Marla to follow. They walked out in silence, loaded the wagon, and climbed up. As they drove out of town, Marla finally found her voice. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For that. For putting you in that position. For making you defend me." Didn't make me do anything. I did it because Blackstone's an ass and needed to be told so. He's right, though. I am poison. Being associated with me is going to cause you nothing but trouble." Colt pulled the wagon to a stop right there in the middle of the road and turned to face her. "You listen to me. Vern Blackstone is a bitter man who's been looking for someone to blame for his failures since long before Thomas Keaton came along. You're not poison. You're a woman who married wrong and paid the price for it. That doesn't make you less. That doesn't make you unworthy, and anyone who says different can go to hell. But the town can think what it wants. I don't live my life for Dust Hollow's approval, and neither should you." Lily was crying softly. Marla pulled her close, kissed her head. "You're going to regret this," Marla said quietly. "Helping me. You're going to regret it." "Let me worry about what I regret." Colt snapped the reins, and the wagon started moving again. But as they rode back toward the ranch, Marla couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that Colt's protection, offered so fiercely in that store, had drawn a line in the sand. The town would see her as his now, and that meant any hatred directed at her would splash onto him as well. She'd never wanted that, never wanted to drag someone else down into the pit Thomas had dug. But it was too late now. The damage was done. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marla found Colt on the porch again, guitar in his hands. She sat down beside him without asking. "Play me that sad song," she said, "the one you play when you think no one's listening." His fingers found the strings, and the melody drifted out into the cold night, haunting, beautiful, full of grief and gentle hope. When he finished, Marla said, "I should leave. Come spring, like we agreed. Maybe sooner." "Why?" "Because staying is selfish. Because every day I'm here, I'm making your life harder. Because you still don't think you deserve this," Colt interrupted. "You still don't think you deserve kindness or help or a place to rest. Maybe I don't. And maybe you're wrong." He set the guitar aside. "You know what I think? I think you're so used to being told you're not enough that you've started believing it. I think Thomas Keaton spent years convincing you that you were the problem, that you were the reason things went bad. And I think you're still letting him win." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know how to stop." "You start by staying. You start by letting someone care about you without punishing yourself for it." His voice softened. "You start by believing that maybe, just maybe, you deserve better than you got." "Do you believe you deserve better?" The question caught him off guard. He was quiet for a long time. "No," he admitted finally. "I don't, but that doesn't mean I'm right. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we both deserve more than we think we do." Marla looked at him, really looked, and saw not the cold, distant rancher she'd first met, but a man as wounded and scared as she was. A man who'd offered her everything he had left to give, not because he expected anything in return, but because he couldn't stand to see someone else suffer the way Catherine had suffered. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for not giving up." "Same to you." They sat together in the cold, neither one touching, but closer than they'd been before. Two damaged souls trying to figure out if healing was even possible, if people like them, people who'd lost so much, could ever find their way back to something whole. Inside, the fire crackled. The wind sang through the prairie grass, and somewhere in the darkness, hope flickered like a candle that refused to go out, fragile and fierce and impossibly stubborn. Winter was coming. The hard times weren't over. But for now, in this moment, They had shelter. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough to keep going. Sometimes that was everything. The days grew shorter and colder, and with them came a change in Dust Hollow that Marla felt even from 3 miles away. It started with small things, supplies that took longer to gather at the general store, prices that seemed higher than they should be, looks that lasted a beat too long. Martha Winters had stopped making eye contact entirely. Other shopkeepers served them with tight lips and tighter silence. Colt noticed but said nothing, just loaded the wagon faster and kept his hand close to Marla's elbow whenever they were in town. But Marla saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes tracked every person who whispered as they passed. 3 weeks after the confrontation with Vern Blackstone, everything came to a head. Marla had taken Lily into town alone. Colt had protested, but she'd insisted. She couldn't live her life afraid, couldn't teach Lily to hide from the world. So she'd hitched the wagon herself, bundled her daughter against the December cold, and made the journey with her spine straight and her chin up, even though her hands shook on the reins. The first stop was the general store. Martha filled her order with mechanical efficiency, still not meeting her eyes, and Marla paid and left without incident. The next stop was the dress shop. Lily had outgrown her winter coat, and Marla had saved enough from the small wages Colt insisted on paying her to buy fabric for a new one. But when she pushed open the door to Mrs. Henderson's shop, the seamstress looked up from her work and her face went hard. "We're closed," Mrs. Henderson said. "The sign says you're open until 5. "Not for you." The words hit like a slap. Marla felt Lily's hand tighten in hers. "Please," Marla said, keeping her voice level. "My daughter needs a winter coat. I have money. I'm not asking for credit. I don't care if you have gold bars. I'm not serving you." Mrs. Henderson stood, crossing her arms. "Vern Blackstone came by last week. Told everyone what you've been doing, living off Colt Harwood, playing the victim, acting like you're not responsible for what your husband did. Well, I lost money too when Thomas Keaton skipped town. So did half the people in this county, and I'm not about to help his widow play house with another man." Heat flooded Marla's face. "I'm not playing anything, and what's between me and Mr. Harwood is none of your concern. It's everyone's concern when you're bringing shame to a decent man. Colt Harwood's been through enough. He doesn't need some desperate widow sinking her claws into him." I'm not, Marla's voice cracked. "I'm just trying to survive, to give my daughter a chance." "Then survive somewhere else." Mrs. Henderson pointed to the door. "Get out of my shop." Marla stood frozen for a moment, humiliation burning through her. Then Lily tugged her hand. "Mama, let's go," the child whispered, her voice small and scared. Marla let herself be pulled toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, Mrs. Henderson spoke again. "You know what people are saying, don't you? They're saying you're no better than a prostitute, that you're trading your body for a roof over your head. That's what your daughter's going to grow up hearing, that her mother's a whore who latched onto the first man stupid enough to take her in." Something inside Marla snapped. She turned back and her voice came out cold and steady. "Say whatever you want about me, but you leave my daughter out of it." "Or what? What are you going to do?" Mrs. Henderson's smile was cruel. "You've got no power here, no friends, no future. You're nothing, Mrs. Keaton, and you'll always be nothing." Marla walked out before the tears could start, pulling Lily with her. They made it to the wagon before she heard the laughter from inside the shop, high and mocking and full of victory. She climbed onto the wagon seat, lifted Lily up beside her, and picked up the reins with shaking hands. They were halfway down the main street when she heard the shout. "Look, it's the Keaton widow!" A group of young men stood outside the saloon, drinks in hand, and one of them, she recognized him as Vern Blackstone's son, Dale, was pointing at her with a grin. "Hey, widow, how's Harwood treating you? He paying you by the hour or by the night?" His friends erupted in laughter. Marla snapped the reins, trying to move faster, but Dale stepped into the street, blocking their path. "Don't be unfriendly now. We're just asking questions. Curious, that's all. I mean, a woman like you moving in with a man so quick after your husband dies makes a fellow wonder what kind of arrangement you've got." "Move," Marla said, her voice tight. "Or what? You going to run me over? That'd just prove what everyone's saying, that you're dangerous, that you bring nothing but trouble." More men were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Marla saw faces she recognized, men who'd known Thomas, men who'd lost money to his schemes. Their expressions ranged from amused to angry to something uglier, a kind of righteous cruelty that made her stomach turn. "My mama's not dangerous," Lily said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the noise. "You're being mean." Dale's grin widened. "Well, look at that. The little bastard's got a mouth on her." "Don't call her that," Marla said, fury overriding fear. "Why not? That's what she'll be known as, the whore's daughter." "Poor thing, growing up with a mother who—" He never finished the sentence. A rock flew from somewhere in the crowd. Marla never saw who threw it, and struck Lily on the side of the head. The child cried out, and blood immediately began streaming down her face. "Lily!" Marla grabbed her daughter, her hands coming away red. "Oh God, Lily!" The crowd went silent. Even Dale looked shocked, stepping back as if he hadn't meant for it to go this far. Marla pressed her shawl against Lily's wound, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to see how bad it was. The cut was above Lily's eyebrow, not deep but bleeding heavily the way head wounds did. Lily was crying, terrified, and Marla felt something break inside her chest. "Who threw that?" she demanded, looking around at the crowd. "Who hurt my child?" No one answered. They just stared, some looking guilty, others defiant, all of them complicit in their silence. "You cowards," Marla hissed. "You spineless, pathetic cowards. She's 6 years old. Whatever you think of me, whatever debt you think I owe, she's innocent. She's a child." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you came back here," someone called from the back of the crowd. "Maybe you should have stayed gone," another voice added. Marla wanted to scream, wanted to fight, but Lily was bleeding and scared and nothing mattered except getting her somewhere safe. She snapped the reins hard, and the wagon lurched forward. Dale jumped aside and the crowd parted, and Marla drove through them with her daughter crying in her lap and blood soaking into her dress. She drove straight past the turn toward Colt's ranch and headed for the doctor's office on the edge of town. Dr. Pierce was old and gruff, but he'd been kind to her once, years ago, when she'd been pregnant with Lily. Maybe he'd help now. She pounded on his door, Lily whimpering in her arms. The door opened and Dr. Pierce's eyes widened when he saw the blood. "What happened?" "Someone threw a rock. Please, she's hurt." He ushered them inside quickly, settling Lily on his examination table. Marla hovered beside her daughter, holding her hand while Dr. Pierce cleaned the wound. "It's not as bad as it looks," he said after a moment. "Head wounds bleed a lot, but the cut's shallow. She'll have a bruise, might have a small scar, but she'll be fine." Relief made Marla's knees weak. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Dr. Pierce bandaged Lily's head, then looked at Marla with something like pity. "Who did this?" "I don't know. Someone in the crowd outside the saloon. They were saying things, awful things, and then someone threw a rock and—" Her voice broke. "She's 6 years old. What kind of people hurt a child?" "Scared people. Angry people." Dr. Pierce sighed. "Marla, I'm going to be straight with you. You need to leave Dust Hollow. This town has turned against you, and it's not going to get better. Vern Blackstone's been spreading poison for weeks now, telling everyone who'll listen that you're taking advantage of Colt Harwood, that you're using him, that you're going to ruin him the way Thomas ruined half the county. People are listening because they want someone to blame for their losses, and you're an easy target." "I haven't done anything wrong." "Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in a place like this, and right now they perceive you as a threat." He helped Lily down from the table. "Take your daughter and go. Tonight, if you can, before something worse happens." Marla paid him with the last of her money and carried Lily back to the wagon. The sun was setting, turning the sky blood red, and she felt hollowed out, scraped raw. Dr. Pierce was right. She needed to leave, needed to take Lily and disappear before her presence here destroyed the one good thing she'd found, Colt's kindness, his protection, his slowly healing heart. She drove back toward the ranch as darkness fell, and her mind churned with plans. She'd pack tonight, leave a note thanking Colt for everything, take the wagon and be gone by morning. It would hurt him, she knew, would feel like another abandonment. But it was better than staying and watching the town tear him apart for the crime of showing her mercy. The ranch came into view, warm light glowing from the cabin windows. Marla pulled the wagon into the yard and climbed down, lifting Lily carefully. The child had stopped crying, but was silent in that awful way children got when the world had hurt them too much. The cabin door flew open before Marla could reach it, and Colt stood there, his face tight with worry. "What happened?" he demanded, taking in Lily's bandaged head, the blood on Marla's dress. "What the hell happened?" "We need to talk," Marla said quietly. "Inside." She settled Lily on the bed with her wooden horse and a blanket, then turned to face Colt. The story came out in broken pieces. Mrs. Henderson's cruelty, Dale Blackstone's taunts, the rock, the blood, Dr. Pierce's warning. With every word, Colt's expression grew darker, more dangerous. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" Marla asked. "To town." "No." She caught his arm. "Don't, please. It'll only make things worse." "Worse?" His voice was low and furious. "They hurt your daughter. They called you—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. "I'm not letting that stand." "And what are you going to do, fight the whole town? That's exactly what they want. Proof that I've corrupted you, turned you into someone violent and reckless. I don't care what they want." "Well, I do." The words came out sharp and desperate. "I care because this is my fault. I came here. I brought this trouble to your door, and now a child has been hurt because of me, and you're about to do something you'll regret because of me, and I can't. I won't let you destroy yourself for my sake." "So what, you're just going to let them win? Let them chase you off?" "Yes," Marla said, and the word felt like defeat. "I'm leaving. Tonight. I'll take Lily in the wagon, and we'll be gone by morning. You can tell everyone I stole from you, ran off in the night, whatever you need to say to protect yourself." Colt stared at her like she'd struck him. "You think I care about protecting myself?" "You should care. You should care that staying here helping me is going to cost you everything. The town already hates me. If you defend me now, they'll hate you too, and I won't be responsible for that. This isn't your decision to make." "Yes, it is. It's the only decision I have left." Marla's voice broke. "Don't you understand? I've already destroyed one man's life. I married Thomas thinking I could fix him, save him, make him better, but I couldn't. I failed, and his debts became my debts, and now everyone I touch turns to poison. I won't do that to you. I won't be the reason you lose everything." "You're not poison," Colt said, his voice raw. "How many times do I have to tell you that before you believe it?" "I can't believe it. Not when people keep proving me right. Not when a child gets hurt because of my name." Tears streamed down her face. "I should have left the moment you offered me shelter. Should have known better than to think I deserved any of this. But I was selfish. I wanted to stay. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have something good. And look what happened. Look what my selfishness cost." Colt crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and grabbed her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. "Listen to me. You didn't cause any of this. Vern Blackstone caused this. Dale and his friends caused this. The people who threw that rock caused this. Not you. Never you. But if I hadn't been here, if you hadn't been here, you'd be dead or worse by now. You and Lily both. You came here with nothing, and you've worked yourself to the bone trying to prove you deserve to exist. Well, you do deserve it. You deserve safety and shelter and people who don't treat you like garbage. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let you walk back out into the cold because some small-minded bigots can't see past their own bitterness. Colt, please. No. You don't get to run away from this. You don't get to make that choice for both of us." His hand slid from her shoulders to frame her face, forcing her to look at him. "You want to know why I'm really angry? It's not because the town's talking. It's not even because they hurt Lily. It's because you're standing here telling me you're leaving, and all I can think is that I'm losing someone again, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and you'll be gone, just like Catherine was gone, and I'll be alone again in this empty house with nothing but guilt and grief for company." Marla's breath caught. "You don't mean that, don't I? You think these past weeks have been nothing to me? You think watching you slowly come back to life, seeing Lily smile, hearing laughter in this house again, you think that didn't matter? I thought you were just helping because of Catherine, because you felt guilty." "It started that way," Colt admitted, his voice dropping to something softer. "But it's not that anymore. Hasn't been for a while now. You're not her. You're not a ghost I'm trying to save. You're you, stubborn and scared and stronger than you know, and I—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. "I already lost one person I cared about. I won't lose another." The world seemed to tilt. Marla searched his face, looking for doubt, for pity, for anything that would make sense of what he was saying, but all she saw was certainty, raw, painful certainty. "You don't know me," she whispered. "Not really." "I know you mend my clothes even when they don't need mending because you're afraid of being useless. I know you sing to Lily when you think no one's listening. I know you cry at night sometimes, quiet, like you're afraid of taking up space even in your grief. I know you put everyone else first, always, even when it costs you everything. And I know that if you walk out that door tonight, it'll break something in me that never healed right the first time." Marla couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The walls she'd built around her heart, walls made of shame and unworthiness and the certainty that she deserved nothing good, began to crack. "I don't deserve you," she finally managed. "And I don't deserve you, but maybe that's not how it works. Maybe we don't have to deserve each other. Maybe we just have to choose each other. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to let someone in without destroying them. Then we'll figure it out together." Colt's thumbs brushed away her tears. "But you have to stay. You have to trust that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes. Because I am. And so are you." Before Marla could respond, the sound of hoofbeats echoed from outside, multiple horses riding hard and fast. Colt's expression changed instantly, going cold and alert. He released Marla and moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. "How many?" Marla asked, fear climbing up her throat. "5, maybe 6. He grabbed his rifle from above the door. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me." "No, Colt, don't—" But he was already gone, stepping out onto the porch just as the riders thundered into the yard. Marla rushed to the window, her heart pounding, and saw them illuminated by moonlight. Vern Blackstone in the lead, his son Dale beside him, and 4 other men she vaguely recognized. "Harwood," Vern called out, reining his horse to a stop. "We need to talk." "Then talk from there," Colt said, his rifle held loose but ready. "You're not welcome on my land." "That's fine. Won't take long." Vern leaned forward in his saddle. "Heard there was trouble in town today. Heard the Keaton widow got herself and her brat hurt." "Heard someone threw a rock at a 6-year-old child," Colt corrected, his voice deadly quiet. "Heard a group of grown men harassed a woman and scared her daughter. You hear those things too?" "I heard she's been spreading lies, telling people she's the victim when everyone knows she's the problem. Her and her dead husband's debts. Marla Keaton owes you nothing. Maybe not in money, but in principle? She owes all of us. Her husband stole from good people, and she profits from his theft by playing the helpless widow. Well, we're done playing along." Vern's voice hardened. "You want to harbor her? That's your business. But don't expect the rest of us to pretend she's anything other than what she is. A con artist's widow trying to work her next mark." Colt's finger moved toward the trigger. "You've got 5 seconds to get off my property before I start shooting. We're not here to fight, just to warn you. That woman's poison, Harwood. She'll ruin you the same way her husband ruined everyone else. And when she does, don't come crying to us for help. 1. You're making a mistake. 2. The whole town's talking, saying you've lost your mind over some cheap. 3. Vern held up his hands. "Fine. We're leaving. But remember this moment when everything falls apart. Remember that we tried to warn you." He wheeled his horse around, and the others followed. They rode out fast, disappearing into the darkness, and Colt stood there on the porch for a long moment after they'd gone, the rifle still in his hands. Marla opened the door and stepped out. "Colt, they'll be back," he said, not looking at her. "Maybe not tonight, but they'll be back. They've decided you're the enemy, and they're not going to stop until you're gone. Then I'll go. I'll leave, and they'll forget about me, and you can—" "No." He finally turned to face her, and his expression was fierce. "You heard what I said in there. All of it. Did you think I was just talking? I think you're trying to save me because you couldn't save her. And I think you're trying to run because you're afraid that if you stay, you might actually be happy. And happiness scares you more than anything else because you don't believe you deserve it. He set the rifle down and moved closer. But you're wrong. You deserve every good thing, Marla, and I'm not letting you throw it away because some bitter rancher thinks he knows better. What if they hurt you? What if they burn your barn or kill your horses? Or then I'll deal with it. But I won't deal with losing you. His voice dropped. Not again. I can't. Marla looked at him, this hard, broken man who'd offered her everything he had left, and felt something shift deep inside her. A decision crystallizing, terrifying, and necessary. If I stay, she said slowly, things are going to get worse before they get better. The town won't forgive this. They'll come after both of us. Let them. You could lose everything. Already lost everything once. Survived it. I'll survive it again if I have to, but I won't survive losing you. Not willingly. The wind picked up, cold and biting, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. Marla thought about running, about packing Lily up, and disappearing into the night like she'd planned. It would be easier, safer, the smart thing to do. But Colt was right. She wasn't running from danger. She was running from the possibility of being loved, of being worth something, of mattering to someone beyond being a burden or a debt. And she was tired of running. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. You mean it? I'm terrified, but yes, I'll stay. Colt exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Then, without warning, he pulled her into his arms. A fierce, desperate embrace that spoke of relief and fear and something deeper that neither of them had words for yet. Marla let herself be held, let herself feel safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. Inside the cabin, Lily was sleeping, protected and warm. Outside, the night stretched vast and uncertain. But here, in this moment, wrapped in Colt's arms, Marla felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Fragile and frightening and absolutely real. The storm was coming. They both knew it. But they'd face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms under the cold December stars, neither one wanting to let go first. When they finally pulled apart, Colt kept his hands on her shoulders, as if afraid she might vanish if he stopped touching her. Come inside, he said quietly. It's freezing out here. Marla nodded, and they walked back into the cabin together. Lily was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling peacefully despite the bandage on her head. Marla sat down on the edge of the bed and smoothed her daughter's hair, fighting back fresh tears. She's strong, Colt said from behind her. Stronger than you think. She shouldn't have to be. She's 6 years old. She should be playing and laughing and learning to read, not getting rocks thrown at her because of who her father was. Her father was Thomas Keaton, but that's not who she is, and it's not who you are either. Marla looked up at him, this man who'd become so much more than a reluctant rescuer. You keep saying that, but I don't know how to believe it. Then I'll keep saying it until you do. Colt moved to the fireplace, adding wood to the dying flames. We should talk about what happens next. You mean when Vern comes back? Not if. When? He straightened, dusting off his hands. He's not going to let this go. He's been nursing his hatred for years, and now he's got a target. He won't stop until he's driven you away or destroyed me trying. Then maybe... don't. Colt cut her off before she could suggest leaving again. We already had that conversation. You're staying. Now we need to figure out how to deal with what's coming. Marla stood, wrapping her arms around herself. What can we do? We're 2 people against an entire town. We're not completely alone. Dr. Pierce helped you today. And there are others, people who aren't comfortable with what's happening, even if they're too scared to speak up yet. That's not exactly an army. No, but it's a start. Colt pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. Tomorrow morning, I'm riding into town. I'm going to the sheriff, telling him what happened to Lily. A child was assaulted. That's a crime, no matter who her mother is. Sheriff Polk won't do anything. He was friends with Thomas. He lost money, too. Maybe. But I'm going to make him look me in the eye and refuse to do his job. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that when a child got hurt, the law turned its back. Some people might not care, but some will. Marla wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it was pointless. But she saw the determination in his eyes and realized this was about more than just justice for Lily. This was Colt drawing his line in the sand, making it clear that he wouldn't be intimidated or bullied into abandoning her. "What about Vern?" she asked. "He's not going to stop because you talked to the sheriff." "No. But every action he takes from now on, I'm going to make public. Every threat, every attempt to drive you away. I'm going to make sure people see it for what it is. Bullying, cruelty, the kind of behavior that decent people should be ashamed of. And if they're not ashamed," Colt's jaw tightened, "then we'll deal with that too. But one way or another, Marla, you're not leaving, and I'm not backing down. Whatever comes, we face it together." The word together settled into Marla's chest, warm and unfamiliar and terrifying. She'd been alone for so long, even when Thomas was alive she'd been alone, that the idea of someone actually standing beside her felt like a dream she'd wake up from any moment. But Colt was real. His determination was real. And slowly, painfully, she started to believe that maybe this was real too. That night, sleep came hard. Marla lay beside Lily, listening to the wind rattle the windows, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hatred in Mrs. Henderson's face, heard Dale Blackstone's cruel laughter, felt the weight of that rock that had struck her daughter. Sometime past midnight, she gave up and slipped out of bed. The cabin was dark, except for the glow of banked coals in the fireplace. She moved quietly to the window and looked out at the moonlit prairie, trying to find some kind of peace in the vastness of it. "Can't sleep either?" She turned to find Colt sitting in the shadows near the hearth, fully dressed, his rifle across his knees. "Were you planning to sleep at all?" she asked. "Someone needs to keep watch, in case Vern decides tonight's the night to make good on his threats." Marla moved closer, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You can't stay awake forever. I'll sleep when I'm sure you're safe." "Colt, I know what you're going to say, that I'm being overprotective, that I can't guard you every second. But right now, tonight, I need to know that if anyone comes through that door, I'll be ready." Marla sat down on the floor beside his chair, pulling the blanket tight. "Tell me about her. About Catherine. The real story, not just the ending." Colt was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly, he began to speak. "Met her at a church social 7 years ago. She was new to the territory, come out from Pennsylvania to live with her aunt after her parents died. Shy, quiet, always had her nose in a book. I wasn't looking for anyone, didn't think I had much to offer a woman. But she smiled at me once, and that was it. I was gone." His voice softened with memory, and Marla could hear the love in it, still fresh after all these years. "Took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask if I could walk her home. Another month before I could kiss her. She made everything feel possible, you know? Like the ranch could be more than just a place to survive. Like I could be more than just a man passing time until I died. She sounds wonderful." She was. But she was also fragile in ways I didn't understand. She'd have these dark spells where she couldn't get out of bed, couldn't eat, couldn't see any reason to keep going. At first I thought it was just sadness about her parents, but it got worse after we got engaged. Like the closer we got to actually having a life together, the more she pulled away. Colt's hands tightened on the rifle. I should have seen it, should have recognized that something was really wrong, but I was so focused on building us a future that I missed her drowning right in front of me. And then one morning, she was just gone. You can't blame yourself for that. Can't I? I was the person who knew her best, who loved her most. If I couldn't save her, what good was any of it? His voice cracked. For 5 years, I've been asking myself what I missed, what I could have done differently, and I've never found an answer that makes it hurt less. Marla reached up and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I think sometimes people are just in too much pain to be saved. I think sometimes they're fighting battles we can't see, and they get tired of fighting. That doesn't make it your fault. Then why does it feel like it is? Because you loved her. Because guilt is easier than accepting that some things are beyond our control. She squeezed his hand. I understand that. I spent months blaming myself for Thomas, for every debt he left, every person he hurt. Like if I'd just been better, smarter, more vigilant, I could have stopped him. But I couldn't. He made his choices, and I paid the price, just like Catherine made hers, and you've been paying the price ever since. Colt looked down at their joined hands. Is that why you think you don't deserve anything good? Because you're still paying? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just scared that if I stop paying, if I let myself be happy, something will come along and take it all away again. At least if I expect nothing, I can't be disappointed. That's not living, Marla. That's just surviving. I know, but surviving was all I could manage for a long time. And now? She looked up at him, at this broken man who'd offered her everything he had left, and felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight bands of fear and shame that had held her together for so long. Now I think maybe I want to try living again, she whispered. I'm terrified, but I want to try. Colt lifted their joined hands and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gentle gesture that made her heart stutter. Then we'll try together, he said. They sat like that until dawn, talking quietly about small things, favorite memories, childhood dreams, the lives they'd imagined before everything fell apart. It was the most honest conversation Marla had ever had, raw and real and completely without pretense. When the sun finally rose, painting the prairie in shades of gold and amber, Colt stood and stretched. I'm going to town, he said. You and Lily stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Fear spiked through her. What if something happens? Then you take Lily and you run, straight to Dr. Pierce's house. He'll help you get somewhere safe. Colt, promise me, Marla. Promise that if things go wrong, you'll protect Lily first and worry about me second. She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she wouldn't leave him behind, but she had Lily to think about, and that changed everything. I promise, she said, but you promise me you'll come back. I promise. He grabbed his coat and hat, checked his rifle one more time, then turned back to her. For a moment, he just looked at her, and something passed between them that felt like a vow. Unspoken, but binding. Then he was gone, riding toward town, and Marla was left alone with Lily and her fears. The hours crawled by. Marla tried to keep busy, made breakfast, cleaned dishes that were already clean, mended clothes that didn't need mending. Lily was quieter than usual, the bandage on her head a stark reminder of yesterday's violence. They played quietly with the wooden horse, read from Colt's book of poems, and watched the horizon for any sign of his return. It was past noon when Marla heard hoofbeats. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she grabbed the spare pistol Colt had left on the table, positioning herself between the door and Lily. But it was Colt who pushed through the door, his face grim. What happened? Marla asked, setting down the pistol with shaking hands. About what I expected. Sheriff Polk listened to my report, wrote it down, then told me there wasn't much he could do without witnesses willing to testify. Said it was likely just an accident, boys being rowdy, nothing criminal. That's ridiculous. They assaulted a child. I know, so I went to Judge Morrison next. Same story. Needs proof, needs witnesses, can't prosecute based on my word alone. Colt threw his hat on the table. It's a wall, Marla. Every person in that town who has any power has decided you're not worth protecting. Despair washed over her. So what do we do? I went to see Mrs. Henderson after that, told her exactly what I thought of her refusing to serve you. Then I went to every other business owner and said the same thing, that if they won't serve you, they don't get my business either. Marla's eyes widened. Colt, you can't. That's everything. Supplies, feed, everything you need for the ranch. I'll ride to Hadley Creek for supplies. It's farther, but I'm not giving money to people who treat you like trash. His expression softened slightly. It's not much, but it's something. It's more than anyone's ever done for me. He moved closer, and his hand came up to cup her cheek. You're worth doing more for. I wish you could see that. Before Marla could respond, there was a knock at the door, sharp, authoritative. They both froze. Mr. Harwood? A voice called. It's Dr. Pierce. I need to speak with you. Colt opened the door cautiously, and Dr. Pierce stepped inside, his face troubled. What is it? Colt asked. I came to warn you. Vern Blackstone's been talking around town, stirring people up. He's saying you've chosen the widow over your own neighbors, that you're betraying everyone who ever showed you kindness. Some folks are listening. Let them listen. You don't understand. He's planning something. I don't know what, but I heard him talking to his son and a few other men. They mentioned coming out here, solving the problem themselves. I thought you should know. Colt's expression went cold. When? I don't know, but soon. Maybe even tonight. Dr. Pierce looked at Marla with pity. I'm sorry, Mrs. Keaton. I wish I could do more. You've done more than most, Marla said quietly. Thank you for warning us. After Dr. Pierce left, Colt immediately started preparing. He checked the rifle, loaded the spare pistol, made sure all the windows were secure. If they come tonight, he said, you and Lily hide in the root cellar. There's a false panel at the back that leads to a tunnel. Catherine and I dug it years ago in case of Indian raids that never came. It comes out near the creek, about a quarter mile from here. What about you? I'll hold them off as long as I can, then follow you if I'm able. No. Marla's voice was firm. We're not splitting up. If they come, we face them together, or we all run together. Marla, no. I'm not hiding while you risk your life for me. Not again. Either we stand together, or we leave together. Your choice. Colt stared at her, clearly torn between protecting her and respecting her wishes. Finally, he nodded. Together, then. But at the first sign of real danger, you take Lily and run. Promise me. I promise. Night fell like a hammer. They kept the fire low, the curtains drawn. Lily sensed the tension and stayed close to Marla, her small hand clutching her mother's skirt. They waited in tense silence, jumping at every sound, every creak of the house settling. Midnight came and went, then 1 in the morning. Maybe Dr. Pierce had been wrong. Maybe the sound of hoofbeats shattered the silence. Multiple horses approaching fast. Colt grabbed his rifle and positioned himself near the window. Get Lily. Move toward the cellar, but wait for my signal. Marla scooped up her daughter and moved to the trap door in the floor near the kitchen, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. The riders stopped in the yard. Through the window she could see torches, at least 6 of them, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. Harwood! Vern's voice boomed through the night. We need to talk. Then talk from there, Colt called back, not opening the door. This has gone far enough. You've made your point, but it's time for the widow to go. Tonight, peacefully. She's not going anywhere. Then you're a fool. We tried to warn you, tried to give you a chance to see reason, but you chose her over your own people. That makes you as guilty as she is. Guilty of what? Showing basic human decency? Guilty of harboring a woman who brings nothing but trouble. Guilty of betraying everyone who ever called you friend. Guilty of throwing away your reputation for a woman who'll leave you the first chance she gets. Marla flinched at the words, even though she knew they weren't true. Or were they? Would she have stayed if Colt hadn't insisted? If he hadn't made her promise? Last chance, Harwood. Send her out, or we'll come in and get her. Touch this door, and I'll shoot the first man through it. There was a long pause. Then Vern's voice again, colder now. So be it. Boys, light it up. Light what up? Colt's words cut off as the first torch flew through the air and landed on the roof. Within seconds, flames were licking across the wooden shingles. Another torch hit the side of the cabin, then another. The cellar, now! Colt shouted, firing a shot through the window that sent the riders scattering. Marla threw open the trapdoor and climbed down, Lily in her arms. Colt was right behind them, pulling the door shut just as the cabin above started to fill with smoke. The cellar was small and dark, lit only by a single lantern Colt lit with shaking hands. Above them they could hear the crackle of flames, the shouts of men, the crash of something heavy falling. The tunnel, Colt said, moving to the back wall and pushing aside a shelf to reveal a narrow opening. Go, I'll be right behind you. Marla crawled into the tunnel first, Lily pressed against her chest. The tunnel was narrow and low, barely wide enough for an adult. She crawled as fast as she could, feeling Colt behind her, hearing the muffled roar of the fire above them. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes before she saw moonlight ahead. She crawled faster, emerged into cold night air near the creek, and pulled Lily out after her. Colt came through a moment later, and they all 3 lay there gasping, watching smoke pour from the tunnel entrance. Behind them, in the distance, Colt's cabin was fully engulfed in flames, lighting up the night sky like a funeral pyre. I'm so sorry, Marla sobbed, clutching Lily. Oh God, Colt, I'm so sorry. You're home. Everything? It's just wood, Colt said. but his voice was hollow. We're alive. That's what matters. But Marla could see the devastation on his face as he watched his home burn. The home he'd shared with Catherine, the home he'd built with his own hands, all of it, gone, because of her. We need to move, Colt said, pulling himself together with visible effort. They might come looking. We need to get to Dr. Pierce's house. They made their way through the darkness, stumbling over rough ground, Lily crying softly against Marla's shoulder. Behind them, the fire continued to burn, a beacon of hatred and destruction visible for miles. When they finally reached Dr. Pierce's house on the edge of town, the old doctor took one look at them, soot-covered, exhausted, traumatized, and ushered them inside without a word. "Vern Blackstone?" he asked. Colt nodded. "Burned us out. We barely escaped." "Jesus." Dr. Pierce ran a hand through his white hair. "This has to stop. This is attempted murder, not just harassment." "Will Sheriff Polk do anything about it?" Marla asked, already knowing the answer. "Probably not. Not unless we can prove it was deliberate arson, and good luck getting anyone to testify against Vern." Dr. Pierce looked at them with deep sympathy. "You can stay here tonight, but you need to think seriously about what comes next. This won't end until one of you breaks." "I should go," Marla whispered. "I should take Lily and—" "No." Colt's voice was absolute. "We already had this conversation. You're not leaving. Your house just burned down because of me. My house burned down because Vern Blackstone is a criminal and the law won't stop him. That's not on you." "But, no." Colt turned to face her fully, his eyes intense despite his exhaustion. "Listen to me. Vern wanted you gone. He wanted to scare you away. If you leave now, he wins. He learns that violence works, that he can burn down anyone who disagrees with him. I won't give him that satisfaction, and neither will you." "Then what do we do?" Marla's voice broke. "We have nothing left. No home, no—" "We have each other," Colt interrupted. "We have Lily. We have the land. They can't burn that. And we have the truth. That's more than nothing." Dr. Pierce cleared his throat. "There might be another option. The land office. If Colt transfers part of his property to you, Marla, then you're not just a guest or a dependent. You're a landowner. That gives you legal standing, protection under territorial law. It's not much, but it's something." Marla stared at him. "I can't ask him to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." Colt's expression was determined. "Tomorrow we go to the land office. I transfer a portion of the ranch to you, enough for a paddock and a stable. You become a property owner, a taxpayer, someone the law has to acknowledge. And then we rebuild. Together." "Colt, that's everything. That's your future, your security." "My future is standing right here," he said quietly. "Everything else is just details." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Marla looked at this man who'd lost his home defending her, who'd stood between her and a mob, who was now offering her a piece of his land, his legacy, without hesitation. And for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be chosen. Not tolerated, not pitied, but genuinely chosen by someone who saw all her flaws and scars and chose her anyway. "Okay," she whispered. "Tomorrow, we go to the land office." Colt nodded, then pulled her into his arms, an embrace that felt like a promise, a vow, a declaration that no matter what came next, they'd face it side by side. Dr. Pierce showed them to a spare room, and they settled Lily on the bed. The child had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by fear and tears. Marla sat beside her daughter, stroking her hair, while Colt stood at the window watching the distant glow of the fire that had consumed his home. "Do you really mean it?" Marla asked softly. "About the land?" "Every word." "Why?" He turned to look at her, and his expression was raw and honest. "Because I already lost everything once when Catherine died. And I learned that things, houses, possessions, all of it, don't mean anything without someone to share them with. I'd rather have you and nothing else than have everything and be alone." Marla felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, for what's coming." "You don't have to be strong alone. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We're in this together now, your strength and mine, combined. That's how we survive. And if it's not enough, then we'll find more. But we won't quit, and we won't give up on each other. He moved closer, kneeling beside the bed so they were eye level. Marla, I need you to hear me. Really, hear me. You deserve this. You deserve to be protected and valued and given a chance at a real life. And I'm going to spend every day proving that to you until you finally believe it. I want to believe it, she whispered. I'm just so scared. So am I. But we'll be scared together. He took her hand, and she held on tight, anchoring herself to this moment, this man, this fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them and something better lay ahead. Outside, the night deepened. The fire burned down to embers. And in Dr. Pierce's spare room, 3 people who'd lost almost everything found something more valuable than any possession. They found each other, and the stubborn determination to keep fighting for the life they deserved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The land office, the town's reaction, Vern's next move. But tonight, they had shelter. They had safety. They had hope. And sometimes that was enough. Morning came too soon, pale winter light filtering through Dr. Pierce's curtains. Marla woke with Lily curled against her side and the smell of smoke still clinging to her clothes. For a moment, she let herself pretend the previous night had been a nightmare. Then she saw Colt sitting in the chair by the window, still wearing the same soot-stained shirt, watching the street with tired eyes, and reality crashed back. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked quietly. He looked over, and she saw exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "Couldn't. Kept thinking they might come here next." "Colt. I know I can't stay awake forever, but last night—" He trailed off, jaw tightening. "Last night I watched everything I built burn to the ground. I'm not ready to risk anything else." Marla slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Lily, and moved to his side. She placed her hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "We're still here," she said softly. "All 3 of us. That's what matters." "Is it enough?" The question hung in the air, heavy with doubt. Before Marla could answer, Dr. Pierce knocked and entered with a tray of coffee and bread. "Eat," he said, setting it down. "You'll need your strength today. The whole town's talking about the fire. Some folks are calling it justice. Others—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Others are starting to ask questions, starting to wonder if maybe Vern went too far." "Too far?" Marla's voice was bitter. "He tried to kill us." "I know, and there are people who see that for what it is. Not many yet, but a few. Mrs. Talbot from the boarding house stopped me on my way back from the mercantile this morning. Said she felt sick about what happened. Said burning a man's home was criminal, no matter the reason." "Did she say it loud enough for anyone else to hear?" Colt asked. Dr. Pierce's silence was answer enough. After they ate, Colt stood and reached for his coat. "The land office opens at 9. We should go now before word spreads that we survived." "You think Vern doesn't know?" Marla asked. "Oh, he knows, but I want this done before he can think of a way to stop it." They bundled Lily up and made their way through the quiet morning streets. A few early risers stopped to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to satisfaction. Marla kept her head high, refusing to give them the pleasure of seeing her broken. The land office was a small building near the church, run by a fastidious man named Edgar Wilkins, who looked up from his ledgers with surprise when they entered. "Mr. Harwood," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "I heard about the fire. Terrible business." "It was arson, Mr. Wilkins, and I'm here to make sure something good comes from it." Colt laid out his plan clearly and firmly. He wanted to transfer a portion of his ranch, 10 acres including the paddock area and space for a stable, to Marla Keaton. He had the deed, the maps, everything needed to make it legal. Wilkins listened, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. "Mr. Harwood, I'm not sure this is wise. Mrs. Keaton's reputation in town is complicated. Transferring property to her might be seen as, I don't care how it's seen. Can you do it or not?" "Legally, yes, but—" "Then do it." Wilkins hesitated, clearly torn between his professional duty and social pressure. Finally, he sighed and pulled out the necessary forms. It took an hour of paperwork, signatures, and official stamps. But when they walked out of that office, Marla held a deed in her hands with her name on it. She owned land, real land. For the first time in her life, she had something that was truly hers, something no one could take away. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, staring at the document. "Don't say anything. Just don't give up on it. On us." Colt's hand found hers. "This is your stake in the future we're building. Our future." They were halfway back to Dr. Pierce's house when they heard the commotion. A crowd had gathered in the town square, and at its center stood Vern Blackstone, holding court like some kind of frontier judge. "We can go around," Dr. Pierce suggested quietly, but Colt was already moving toward the crowd, his expression set. "No more hiding," he said. The crowd parted as they approached, whispers spreading like wildfire. Vern saw them, and his face twisted with fury. "Well, well, the rats survived. Disappointing." "We survived your attempted murder, if that's what you mean," Colt said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "You burned my home to the ground with a woman and child inside. That's not justice, Blackstone. That's criminal." "Criminal? You're the one harboring a thief's widow. You made your choice, Harwood. Don't cry about the consequences." "The consequences of showing basic human decency? The consequences of refusing to punish someone for her dead husband's sins?" Colt's voice carried across the square. "Look at yourselves, all of you. You're so busy nursing grudges that you've forgotten what it means to be decent people. A child was assaulted, a home was burned, and you're standing here acting like it's justified. Thomas Keaton stole from us," someone shouted from the crowd. "Thomas Keaton is dead," Colt shot back. "He's been dead for months, and this woman had nothing to do with his schemes. She was his victim as much as any of you. She's living off your charity, isn't she? Taking advantage of your guilt over Catherine?" The words hit like a physical blow. Colt went very still, and Marla felt him start to pull away, to retreat behind his walls, but she squeezed his hand tight and stepped forward. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Yes, I'm Thomas Keaton's widow. Yes, I came here with nothing. And yes, Mr. Harwood offered me shelter when every single one of you turned your backs. He did that not because I deserved it, but because he's a better person than any of you have proven to be." "You don't get to lecture us about—" Vern started, but Marla cut him off. "I'm not done. You want to hate me? Fine. Hate me for being naive enough to marry a liar. Hate me for not seeing through Thomas's schemes. Hate me for surviving when good people lost money because of him. But my daughter is 6 years old. She never hurt anyone. She never stole anything. And one of you threw a rock at her head because you couldn't stand that she existed. What kind of people does that make you?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others stared at their feet. "And last night," Marla continued, her voice growing stronger, "you burned a good man's home because he refused to throw us out to freeze. You tried to kill us. And now you're standing here acting like you're the victims. Like you're the ones who've been wronged." "You don't understand what we lost," a woman called out. Martha Winters, Marla realized. "Don't I? I lost everything. My home, my reputation, any chance at a normal life. I lost the man I thought I'd married, not to death, but to the realization that he'd never existed in the first place. I lost my dignity, my savings, my wedding ring. I came here with one dress and a starving child begging for a chance, and you couldn't even give me that." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop. "So yes, I understand loss, but I also understand that at some point you have to decide whether you're going to spend the rest of your life drowning in bitterness or whether you're going to try to be better. Mr. Harwood chose to be better. He chose to help someone even when it cost him everything. That doesn't make him weak or foolish. It makes him the only one of you with any real courage." The silence that fell was profound. Marla stood there, trembling, waiting for the backlash, for the anger, for the mockery. But it didn't come. Instead, Mrs. Talbot stepped forward from the crowd. "She's right," the boarding house owner said quietly. "We've been letting our anger turn us into something ugly. Thomas Keaton was a thief and a liar. But burning a man's home? Hurting a child? That's not justice. That's just more evil piled on top of evil." "Stay out of this, Helen," Vern warned. "No, I won't." Mrs. Talbot's voice grew firmer. "I lost money too, Vern. $200 I'll never see again. But I'm not about to let that turn me into someone who condones attempted murder. What you did last night was wrong, and I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner." Another voice joined hers, the blacksmith, a burly man named Tom Fletcher. "I'm with Helen. This has gone too far. If we're going to call ourselves a civilized town, we need to act like it. We let one widow slide, and soon every grifter in the territory will come running here looking for sympathy," Vern argued. "Then we deal with grifters when they come. But Marla Keaton isn't her husband, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Fletcher turned to face the crowd. "Anyone else tired of letting Vern Blackstone speak for all of us?" Slowly, hesitantly, others began to nod. Not everyone. There were still plenty of hard faces, plenty of crossed arms and suspicious glares. But enough to shift the balance. Sheriff Polk, who'd been standing at the edge of the crowd, finally stepped forward. "Vern Blackstone, I'm placing you under arrest for arson and attempted murder." Vern's face went purple. "You can't be serious. You know what she is. I know a man's home burned down last night with people inside. I know there are witnesses who saw you and your boys with torches. And I know that whatever grudge you're nursing, it doesn't give you the right to commit murder." Polk's voice was heavy, reluctant, but firm. "You've crossed a line, Vern, and this time I can't look the other way." For a moment, it looked like Vern might fight. His hand moved toward his belt, and Colt tensed beside Marla. But then Dale Blackstone, Vern's own son, stepped forward and pulled his father back. "Don't, Pa. It's over." "Boy, you don't know what you're—" "It's over," Dale repeated, and there was something broken in his voice. "We went too far. We could have killed them, could have killed that little girl. And for what? Money that's been gone for years? I won't be part of this anymore." Vern stared at his son like he was looking at a stranger. Then, slowly, the fight went out of him. Sheriff Polk moved in with handcuffs, and the crowd watched in stunned silence as Vern Blackstone was led away, still muttering about justice and betrayal. After he was gone, the crowd began to disperse, people drifting away in small groups, talking in low voices. Some still looked angry, others looked ashamed, but the immediate threat was gone, diffused by the simple act of people choosing to speak up. Mrs. Talbot approached Marla hesitantly. "Mrs. Keaton, I owe you an apology. I should have helped you that first day. Should have stood up for you long before now. I was afraid of losing business, afraid of being ostracized. But that's no excuse." "Thank you," Marla said quietly. "It means more than you know. I have rooms available at the boarding house, free of charge until you and Mr. Harwood can rebuild." "That's very kind, but I insist. It's the least I can do." Over the next few days, something shifted in Dust Hollow. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. Plenty of people still avoided Marla, still whispered behind their hands. But the open hostility faded, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, people began to help. Tom Fletcher offered his forge to repair tools needed for rebuilding. Martha Winters quietly told Dr. Pierce that she'd extend credit to Marla if needed. Even some of the men who'd stood with Vern came forward, shamefaced, offering labor to help rebuild the cabin. "Doesn't make up for what they did," Colt said one evening as they sat on Mrs. Talbot's porch, watching Lily play in the yard. "No," Marla agreed, "but it's a start. You were right, you know. What you said in the square, about choosing to be better." She looked at him. "So were you. About me deserving more than I thought I did. Starting to believe it?" "Maybe. A little." She smiled, small but genuine. "It helps that you keep reminding me." Colt took her hand, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the prairie. Winter was settling in hard now, but there was warmth between them that had nothing to do with temperature. 3 weeks later, the framework of a new cabin stood on Colt's land, bigger than the old one, with an extra room for Lily. The stable was nearly finished too, built on Marla's portion of the property. The work went faster with help from the townsfolk who'd decided that maybe redemption was worth more than grudges. Lily had healed quickly, the way children do, though she still touched the small scar above her eyebrow sometimes when she thought no one was watching. She spent her days helping with the horses, her laughter echoing across the prairie, and slowly the shadows began to fade from her eyes. One evening, as they sat around Mrs. Talbot's dinner table, Colt pulled something from his pocket, a small silver ring, simple and worn. This was Catherine's, he said quietly, looking at Marla. Her engagement ring. I've kept it all these years, couldn't bear to sell it or give it away. Marla's breath caught. Colt, I loved her. I always will. But she's gone. And you're here. And I think she'd want you to have this. Not because you're replacing her, but because you deserve to be chosen, completely, by someone who sees you for who you are and wants a future with you anyway. Tears spilled down Marla's cheeks. I don't know if I'm ready. After Thomas, after everything. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking you to consider a future where you believe you're worth choosing, where you believe you deserve to be loved. Marla looked at the ring, at this man who'd given her everything, at the life they were slowly building together. And for the first time, she let herself truly believe it was possible. Not just survival, but actual happiness. Not just shelter, but a home. Yes, she whispered. I'll consider it. Colt smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face, and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. The months that followed were hard work, but good work. The new cabin was finished by early spring, and they moved in with a small celebration attended by half the town. The stable on Marla's land became operational, and she discovered she had a gift for training horses. Word spread, and soon people from neighboring counties were bringing their animals to her. Lily thrived, growing taller and stronger, her confidence blooming as she learned to ride and help her mother with the horses. She started school in town, and though some children were cruel at first, most accepted her once they saw she was just a normal girl who loved horses and stories and didn't deserve to be punished for her father's sins. Vern Blackstone was tried and convicted of arson. He spent 6 months in territorial prison, and when he came out, he was a quieter, more broken man. His son Dale took over the ranch and ran it honestly, and occasionally he'd ride by Marla's stable to apologize again for his part in what had happened. Spring turned to summer, and the prairie exploded with wildflowers. Marla and Colt fell into a rhythm that felt like partnership, like true companionship. They worked side by side during the day and talked for hours in the evening, sharing dreams and fears and slowly, carefully, building something neither had thought possible: trust. One warm evening in July, exactly 9 months after Marla had first stepped off that stagecoach into Dust Hollow, Colt found her in the stable, brushing down one of the mares. "Got something to show you," he said. She followed him to the paddock area, where a hand-painted sign stood freshly erected: Lily's Meadow, horse training and riding lessons. "I thought, if we're going to make this official, it should have a proper name," Colt said. "Named after the strongest little girl I know." Marla pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "It's perfect. So is this the future you want? Running a stable, teaching kids to ride, building something that's truly yours?" "Ours," she corrected. "This is ours, Colt. All of it." He pulled her close, and she went willingly, no longer afraid of being too much or not enough, no longer convinced that happiness would be snatched away the moment she reached for it. "Marry me," Colt said. "Not because you have to, not because you owe me anything, but because we're good together, because I love you, and I think maybe, just maybe, you love me too." "I do love you," Marla said, the words coming easily now. "I think I've loved you since that first night when you said I deserved better than what I got. Since you looked at me and saw someone worth saving." "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to rest while you did it." She laughed through her tears. "Then yes. Yes, I'll marry you, because you deserve me just as much as I deserve you." The wedding took place in September, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The whole town turned out, some out of genuine happiness, others out of curiosity, but all of them witness to something that mattered. Mrs. Talbot cried openly. Dr. Pierce gave Marla away, and Lily stood beside her mother in a new dress, beaming with pride. When Colt took Marla's hands and spoke his vows, his voice carried across the meadow clear and strong. "I promise to choose you every day, to remind you of your worth when you forget, to stand beside you against whatever comes, because you deserve all of my love, and I'm spending the rest of my life proving it." Marla's own vows were simpler, but no less powerful. "I promise to trust your love even when I'm scared, to build our future with my whole heart, to believe that I deserve this, that we both do. Because you showed me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is accept that we're worthy of being chosen. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers, and even some of the people who'd once wished her gone found themselves applauding. Because love, real love, the kind that survived fire and hatred and doubt, was worth celebrating. The reception lasted until dark, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Children ran wild through Lily's meadow, and adults talked and laughed and slowly, gradually, let old grudges fade into memory. As the stars came out, Colt pulled Marla away from the crowd and led her to the top of a small hill where they could see the whole valley spread out below. The new cabin with its warm lights, the stable with its fresh paint, the meadow where children would learn to ride and heal and grow. "You know what I see when I look at this?" Colt asked. "What?" "Home. Real home. Not just a place to survive, but a place to live, to be happy, to raise a family." He turned to face her. "You gave me that. You and Lily both." "You gave it to us too," Marla said softly. "You gave us a place to belong when the world said we didn't deserve one." They stood together as the moon rose, watching their future unfold beneath them in silver light. Behind them, music and laughter floated up from the meadow. Ahead of them stretched years of work and love and small daily choices to keep choosing each other. It wouldn't always be easy. There would be hard seasons, difficult days, moments when old doubts crept back in. But they'd face it together, two people who'd learned that worthiness wasn't something you earned but something you accepted, that love wasn't weakness but the bravest thing humans could do. A year later, Lily's meadow had become a fixture in the county. Children came from miles around to learn to ride, and Marla discovered she had a gift not just for training horses, but for healing the wounded spirits of kids who needed to know they mattered. Some were orphans, others were troubled. All of them found something at the meadow they couldn't find anywhere else: acceptance. Colt expanded his ranch, working honestly and building a reputation as a fair man who kept his word. The debts Thomas Keaton had left were never fully repaid, but slowly, through hard work and integrity, the stain on the Keaton name began to fade. Marla stood in the meadow one afternoon watching Lily teach a nervous 8-year-old boy how to approach a horse, and she thought back to that desperate woman who'd stepped off a stagecoach with nothing but fear and a prayer. She barely recognized herself in that memory. The woman she'd become, confident, capable, loved, felt like someone entirely new. "You look happy," Colt said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I am happy," Marla said, and meant it completely. "I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that. You deserve to be happy." "I know." She turned in his arms to face him. "It took me a long time to believe it, but I know now. We both deserve this." He kissed her forehead gently. "You once said you didn't deserve love, remember?" "I remember." "What would you say now?" Marla looked out at the meadow, at the children learning to trust and be trusted, at the life they'd built from ashes and determination. She thought about that widow with nothing left, that woman who'd believed she was worthless, and she smiled. "I'd say I was wrong," she said. "I'd say I deserved you all along. I just needed someone brave enough to prove it to me." And did I prove it? Every single day. They stood together as the sun began to set, painting the prairie in shades of gold and amber. Music drifted from the cabin where Mrs. Talbot was teaching Lily to play guitar. The horses whinnied softly in their stalls, and somewhere in the distance a meadowlark sang its evening song. Marla Keaton Harwood, no longer a widow burdened by another man's debts, but a woman who'd claimed her own future, closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of her happiness. It was solid and real, and earned through fire and faith. She'd come to Dust Hollow with nothing, but she'd found everything: love, purpose, belonging, and most important of all, the unshakable knowledge that she was worthy of being chosen. Behind them, the meadow stretched out like a promise kept, alive with laughter and hope, and the steady certainty that sometimes, when two broken people choose to be brave together, they can build something beautiful enough to heal not just themselves, but everyone who finds their way to them. The cowboy had said she deserved him, and he'd spent every day since proving it true. Not because she was perfect, but because love didn't demand perfection, only honesty, courage, and the willingness to keep showing up for each other, day after day, season after season, for all the years to come. And that, Marla thought, as Colt took her hand and led her back toward the lights of home, was the only happy ending that mattered. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A real life, fully lived, with someone who chose her and whom she chose right back over and over again, until choosing became as natural as breathing. She was home. She was loved. She was whole. And she'd never been more certain of anything in her life.